Hey everyone, welcome back to the Inner Revolution podcast. Today we're talking about the question, why not you? A lot of people struggling with porn addiction believe that freedom is for other people. They hear stories of people who have overcome it and think, well, that's great for them, but I'll never get there. Or they feel like they've tried and failed too many times. But I want to challenge that today. What if freedom is for you? What if overcoming this addiction isn't just some distant dream, but something that can actually happen in your life? And that's what we're diving into. We'll cover the science behind addiction, real stories of people who've broken free, and practical steps you can take to make this your reality. So let's get into it. First, let's talk about why quitting porn feels so hard. Because if you've been stuck in this cycle for a while, you've probably wondered questions or said things like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just stop? The answer isn't that you're weak or that you're broken. It's that your brain has literally been rewired. Dr. Donald Hilton, a neurosurgeon, has spoken extensively about how porn addiction affects the brain similarly to drug addiction. And he knows his stuff. He's a neurosurgeon. When you watch porn, your brain releases a flood of dopamine, right? Like we've talked about. This is the same chemical that gets triggered with substances like cocaine or heroin. So over time, your brain gets used to this massive dopamine spike, and it starts needing porn to feel normal. This is why quitting can feel like a withdrawal, because it literally is. It's not just about willpower. Your brain is literally adapted to rely on porn for pleasure and stress relief. In 2015, a study published in JAMA Psychiatry found that frequent porn users actually showed less gray matter in the brain's reward system. In simple terms, their brain became less sensitive to normal pleasures like real relationships, hobbies, or achievements. So if you feel numb or like life is just dull without porn, that's not just in your head, it's a real neurological effect. But the good news is that your brain can heal. Studies show that neuroplasticity, or the brain's ability to rewire itself, is real. Just like your brain adapted to porn, it can also adapt to life without it. But here's the thing. This process starts with believing it's possible. And that brings me back to my question. Why not you? Let's talk about a story about the guy who thought he couldn't quit. We'll name him Bob for this example. So Bob started watching porn when he was 12. By his mid-20s, he was watching it every day, sometimes for hours. He tried to quit so many times, but every time he failed. It just convinced him even more that he was stuck. Then one day, someone asked him, Bob, why not you? At first, he laughed. Right, he had a million excuses. His brain was wired this way. He'd been in it too long. Other guys were stronger than him. But that question, why not you, stuck with him. Over time, he started making small changes. He told a friend, he started tracking his habits, he focused on progress instead of perfection, and eventually, something shifted. That's the key word, eventually. He wasn't perfect. He had setbacks, but that belief, maybe I can change, kept him going. And today, Bob has been porn-free for over 2 years. Shout out my boy Bob. Now here's the thing, Bob wasn't special. He didn't have some superhuman strength. He just stopped telling himself the lie that he couldn't be one of those guys who made it out. So again, why not you? Let's talk about how to retrain your brain, how to actually break the cycle. Because it's not just about saying, well, I'm going to quit. If that worked, then we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. To beat an addiction, you need to understand triggers, habits, and identity. So number one, understanding your triggers. In 2016, a study in addictive behaviors found that stress, boredom, and loneliness are the top triggers for compulsive porn use. That means quitting isn't just about stopping a habit. It's about finding new ways to deal with stress, boredom, and loneliness. Because porn's a filler, right? So with stress, try to exercise, deep breathing, or journaling. For boredom, pick up a hobby that actually excites you. And for loneliness, something you can do is to strengthen your real life relationships. And that takes work. You can't just remove porn. You need to replace it. Number 2, changing your identity statement. James Clear in Atomic Habits, which I'm sure you've all read and love, talks about how identity shapes behavior. If you tell yourself, I'm trying to quit porn, that implies you're still someone who watches porn. Instead, shift your mindset to saying something like, I am becoming the kind of person who doesn't watch porn. It sounds small, but research shows that when you start seeing yourself differently, your actions will start to follow. Number 3 is build accountability. In 2018, a study into behavioral addictions found that people who had accountability partners were significantly more likely to stay porn-free long-term. That goes for any addiction. That's because addiction thrives in isolation. If no one knows you're struggling, there's no outside pressure to change. So find a trusted friend, mentor, or group who can support you. If you don't have someone, there are online groups like NoFap and Fortify. So check those out. And those exist for this exact reason. One thing I like to recommend is what's called the 90-day reboot. Dr. Gary Wilson, who wrote Your Brain on Porn, found that after about 90 days of quitting, the brain starts to heal. Dopamine levels start normalizing, and people report feeling more alive, motivated, and emotionally present. So, does that mean you'll be magically free in 90 days? No. But it's a huge milestone, and people who make it that far, make it to 90 days, have a much higher chance of staying free long term. So, if quitting forever feels impossible, just focus on the next 90 days. Don't focus on forever. And why not you? Why not? What would your life look like without porn? I want you to really think about that question for a second. What would it look like? What would be different in your life if you truly believed you could overcome this? How would you show up differently in your relationships? How much more confident would you feel? How much more alive would you be? Other people have done it. And why not you? All right. So let's make this real. Here are three things you can do today. First is tell someone. Find a friend or mentor or support group who can walk with you. Okay? Number 2 is change your identity statement. Start saying, I am becoming the kind of person who lives without porn. And number 3, take one step today, whether it's deleting triggers, joining an accountability group, or journaling why you want to quit. Just do something. Little steps every day. That's how change happens. That's what we talked about in that last episode in 22, right? So look, look, I know this isn't easy, but no matter how long you've struggled, no matter how many times you failed, freedom is possible. And why not you? Why not? All right, that's it for today's episode. If this helped you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And as always, if you have questions, thoughts, reach out. I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me at on Instagram or down in the comments below. Feel free to ask questions. If there are any topics that you want me to cover as well, feel free to leave that down there, and I'm happy to talk about that in a future episode. Okay? You guys are great. You're doing a lot better than you think you are. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and I'll talk to you next week.